Good morning. Still morning, isn't it? I almost said good afternoon. Morning, everybody. We're going to get started here. We're going to have a short bio so we don't hold up time and let our speakers talk. We have Nikki Miller's going to talk first with JMT, and we'll have questions at the end. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Nikki Miller. I work for JMT Technology Group. I'm so happy to see all of you here. Thank you for coming. Just a quick little bit about the Technology Group. We've been providing services, IT and GIS services, for the last 30 years, primarily to state and local government agencies. We are proud to have a really solid team of GIS people. We have 18 GISPs, and we recently got our GIS-CI endorsing employer certification. We're an Esri business partner, a Trimble business partner, and we have 6 offices here in North Carolina. So the Technology Group is relatively new to the state. We've done some work here, but our engineering counterparts have been here for quite a while. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the benefits of a strategic plan, and I'm actually going to make you do some active audience participation. And then go into the plan elements, talk a little bit about the steps involved in creating a plan, and then reminding you the importance of measuring your success and making sure you're updating your plan. And this presentation is really based on our experience supporting airports and local governments and some universities with their strategic plans. And we've done it both for organizations who have mature enterprise GIS systems, as well as those who are brand new to GIS. So I think these are applicable kind of across the board. So again, we're going to start with some audience participation. So if you all can join me in either grabbing a picture of the screenshot, or you can go to polev.com/JMTT309, or you can even join by text. So you guys a minute to do that. And then the first question I want to ask is, have you ever participated in a GIS strategic planning effort? And this is just for me to get an understanding of who's in the audience, what experience you've had. So hopefully this works. We should start to see some results, hopefully. You guys seeing the question on your phone? Okay, and you're responding, and it's just not displaying? All right, let me switch to, let me see if I can't get this to. All right. Okay, here we go. Sorry, so this is, for some reason, not displaying, so we'll show it this way. All right, so great. 58% of you have participated in a GIS strategic planning effort, 42% no. Thank you. And then the next question, does your organization have a GIS strategic plan? Good, a fair number of you do. Some of you aren't sure. Good, it's a good range. And then last question is, why would you want to create a strategic plan? So ostensibly, you all are here because you have some interest in strategic planning. So what are the reasons that you have for wanting to create a strategic plan? I like the proactive versus reactive. Continuity operations, that's a good one. We have lots of staff who are retiring, and all of that institutional knowledge is leaving with them. So it's a good way to capture some of that. Organization doesn't prioritize GIS. Good. Prioritizing projects. Secure funding, that's absolutely an important part of doing a strategic plan. Unifying platforms. Great. Let me see what else I missed here. Roadmap for where we want to be. Good. All right, focused goals. Good. Okay. Great, I'm going to exit out of here. Let me get back to the presentation. I was hoping that would work, but knew there was a chance that it wouldn't. All right. So, I think you guys touched on a lot of these, providing direction, aligning. So the second bullet I think is really important, and we'll talk about it a little bit in a few slides, but you really want what you're doing as a GIS group or as a GIS person, in whatever group you're in, to be aligning with the organization's goals and objectives. So you don't want to be operating in a vacuum. So that's a good reason to put together a strategic plan. If you are looking to embrace new technology, that's another, important, you have to put some things in place in order to get to that stage. And if you just try to do it alone or without a plan, then you may not be successful. There's the proactive versus reactive, budget planning, increasing awareness and buy-in across the organization. So some of you may be in organizations where you have great buy-in, people know what you're doing and they come to you and, they look to you to provide support. And then in other places, you may have pockets of people who don't know what you do and could really benefit from using GIS tools to improve business processes or, make better informed decisions. So typically the plan elements, again, as the technology group, when we're creating a plan or working with a client to create a plan, we've got the existing conditions, so what's the state of GIS in your organization now, and then where do you want to be, and then looking at that gap between those two. And specifically looking at data, infrastructure, staffing, your organizational structure, maybe it's not ideal. There may be reasons for changing things up. And then of course looking at your systems and applications. We like to put together key recommendations and then provide a plan for how to implement those. Also some budget information. It's important if you're going to progress GIS within your organization, there's a cost associated with that. And so putting together some estimates of what that's going to be. So again, you can have that in your plan, you can present that to your leadership, and then that can help you be successful. And then of course we have an executive summary that we'll have at the top of the plan. So you don't have to have a consultant work with you to develop a strategic plan. You guys can do it yourselves. But if you're going to go that way, and even if you're going to hire someone to help you, you really want to make sure that you're getting buy-in from your leadership in your organization. So your supervisor needs to know and be supportive because you're going to need to spend a lot of time, doing the research, talking to people, putting together the plan, tracking and recording your progress, and then revisiting it. And then the people who you want to, the stakeholders you want to engage throughout the process, they're going to need to dedicate some time to it as well. So you want to make sure that you are getting buy-in from leadership so that they're telling the stakeholders, hey, I want you to do this. I want you to participate, give your feedback. Here's time to be able to do that. So let's talk a little bit about the steps for creating a plan. The first thing you really want to do is identify those stakeholders. So you're really looking to identify the people who are both going to inform the plan as well as those who are going to be impacted by it. Ideally, you're going to be engaging people from all parts of your organization where maybe you're already doing some GIS and where you're not, but also from the leadership all the way down to the worker bees. You also want to you may want to engage external stakeholders, so might be members of the public, if there are partner organizations that you do a lot of work with that you maybe want to start sharing data with more, they might be someone that you want to involve too. And then when you go to present your plan to leadership, when it's kind of all said and done, they're probably going to want to know who you talk to. So make sure you're kind of taking notes on who is involved and who wasn't, quite frankly. I mean, you really shouldn't be excluding people. You want to try to be as welcoming as possible, but inevitably you're going to have stakeholders who just aren't able to make the time or aren't willing to make the time. So it's good for you to know that, and that's obviously going to increase your risk. So you've identified who your stakeholders are. Now you really want to do some homework before you start talking to them. As I mentioned at the top, it's really important for you to understand your organization's mission, vision, and goals so that you can make sure you're tying your goals in the plan back to those. That'll go a long way with your leadership. You want to look at the capital improvement plan. Are there projects that are coming up that may benefit from GIS and other related tools? Are there new systems that are being implemented that you see as an opportunity to engage with a particular group? Are there standard operating procedures? What data do you have? And not just looking at your GIS, but looking at CAD. If you're thinking about doing work on indoors, having floor plans is really necessary. Do you have that information already or not? Also looking at BIM, if you've got new buildings that are coming online, and typically designers are now using Revit, that's fantastic data. It's got tons of information in it that you can bring into your GIS. Also looking at business applications, reports, and other system documentation. You can obviously spend a ton of time doing research, so give yourself some kind of box to work in. Don't spend too much time here, but you want to walk into the room when you're talking with stakeholders with some kind of idea of what's going on in the organization. And I think they'll appreciate that you spent that time. So now you're ready to engage with your stakeholders. And you really want to talk to them about what the current state is and what the future state is. Where do they want to get to? And obviously, you're interested in that as well, so you're going to be providing your input too. When we've done this, we've started with a survey, an online survey for the stakeholders to complete, and then once we get feedback from the survey, we then have interviews. We do like a group interview, and that seems to be a good way to do it. That's certainly not the only way to do it. You may need to do some one-on-one interviews with people. This may especially be true if you have someone in your organization who's just insanely busy but knows everything. You need to just schedule some time to work with them. You may want to do some job shadowing to see how people are actually using the tools that you have and improvements that could be made. And then, of course, I think it's important to have conversations about specific use cases for the different types of tools and data that you may want to have in the future. And sometimes you really just need to do some demonstrations to show what's possible. And a couple things you can do, Esri certainly has tons of online examples. You can pull those up. You can also talk to other organizations that are like you. If you're in a county or a city, talk to another city that may be a little more advanced than you are, and they may have some tools and experiences and examples that they can share. And really, I found that when you have someone from another organization who does that same thing, talk to the stakeholder, your stakeholder, they really appreciate that and may listen more to them than they will ever listen to you. And they have, the folks from the partner organization can really share those lessons learned. So part of engaging with stakeholders, we do a SWOT analysis. So this is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I think a lot of you have probably heard this term before. The strengths and weaknesses are more internal to the organization, whereas opportunities and threats are external. Obviously, the strengths and opportunities are more on the positive side, and the weaknesses and the threats are on the negative side. So the SWOT analysis can really serve as sort of a brainstorming device, and it can reveal limitations and maybe some resistance to change. It can also help explore solutions to problems. So some examples that we've seen when we've worked with organizations that are brand new to GIS, maybe a strength is that they have support from leadership to develop a GIS. That's why we're there developing a strategic plan for them. And maybe they've got some existing data to work with. Some example weaknesses, because they're so new to GIS, they may require a lot of training, and they may recognize that. And then because there's so many opportunities, kind of where do you begin? Some opportunities, there's interest in improving business processes or automating processes across the organization. Maybe they have some real-time data feeds that they're paying for that they're not really getting the most value out of, and that could be something that goes on that opportunities list. And then threats, there may be a lack of understanding or support from IT. We've seen that a lot in organizations that are brand new to GIS. Their IT folks just aren't familiar with it, and there can be some challenges there. And then, of course, just the cost. We try to make sure that we talk about when you are going down this path of creating an enterprise GIS, you're never done, right? There's always going to be maintenance. You have to keep the data up to date, and you're going to continue investing in tools and people to grow their skills. So making sure that it's really clear to the organization what that investment is going to be, so that you don't stand something up that's impossible to maintain. When we've talked to our more mature organizations, they have lots of highly skilled GIS staff usually that are open to learning new things. They've got great successes that they can demonstrate that where they've used GIS to improve business processes, but maybe they've got fractured data storage and there's some lack of confidence in existing data. They don't have data governance in place for maybe certain data sets. So these are the types of things that are coming up during the SWOT analysis. And so in the next step, you're going to basically analyze the results of the SWOT analysis and the information that you collected when meeting with stakeholders, and you're going to start to organize those things into themes. So you're going to hear a lot of common themes. It's really good to start organizing those goals into themes and then defining objectives for each of those goals. And it's important to make sure your objectives are SMART. So the SMART, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And then you're going to start to create your implementation plan. So what's the timeline going to be for these different objectives? And it may be that for goal number 1, objectives 2 and 3 are really more in the, midterm. Maybe they're 2 or 3 years out. And the first objective is, something that you can tackle immediately, that short term. So kind of divvying those things up into the short term, midterm, and long term. And that's also where you're starting to put together those estimates so that ultimately you can present a plan that shows these are the things we want to tackle to achieve these goals, and this is our approximate budget for doing this. So you've done this work. You put a lot of time and effort into it. You may have a 40-page document, and no one's going to read that except for you, right? So think about summarizing those results into something that is a little more digestible by the people who you want to share the document with. And really, you should be sharing it across your organization. So some examples, we've done a story map. I've seen some infographics. I've seen one-pagers, although the one-pager is like an 11 by 17 with 8-point font. I don't recommend that route, but have a plan for how you're going to put all that information together so that you can, share it with folks and get feedback. All right, so you've got a plan. Fantastic. Now what? So make sure you are sharing that plan. And it's not that you share it one time and then you don't ever talk about it again. You need to continually talk to stakeholders about it. And things are going to change within your organization, right? So you are going to want to revisit that plan at least once a year. Let's say that there's a brand new leadership that comes in. You're going to want to brief them on the plan that you have, and then you may want to make some changes. Maybe your organization goes through their own strategic planning, and they come up with new goals and objectives for the organization. You're going to want to realign your plan to those. You want to make sure you're publicizing success stories. That can really help to demonstrate to different stakeholders that, hey, this is working well, and you should get involved. You want to continue to get buy-in from others. And then calculating the ROI, if you have a project that you've done and it's very obvious that you're saving the organization a significant amount of time and money with this new process, get that down. Like, put it in a spreadsheet. You're going to do some, rough order of magnitude. It's not going to be perfect. But it, again, really goes a long way with leadership and seeing what value you're bringing to the organization. And then again, as I said earlier, make sure that you're going back to your plan on at least an annual basis to reevaluate it. The plans that we've worked on are typically a 5-year horizon. So you may want to start thinking about revisiting it in year 3 or 4 so that you can have that time to get the new plan in place and then execute. And I think I talked really fast. Not bad. Right at 1 minute. Yeah. All right. Good. So that is the strategic planning presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone has.
So you want to have any questions for Nikki? Yes.
Have you, related to return on investment or conveying what's been accomplished, have you done maybe a dashboard or some of this?
I have not personally, but I think that's a fantastic idea. Absolutely.
And when you completed satisfaction, checking it off.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. I have not personally seen organizations doing that, but I think that's great.
You could incorporate that into your story.
Yeah. That's a really good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from New York City. I'm here to give a little talk later, but I'm just curious, the way we look at things is that if you have $1 billion budget, let's say hypothetically, you have $2 billion worth of opportunity to actually make a difference. On the one side is the collection of revenues, which GIS is heavily
Yeah, that's a good question. I have not given a lot of thought to that specifically. I think yes, I think you'd want to look at it from both angles. Absolutely. Anybody else?
Anybody else has some questions? Yes.
I guess how do you kind of break that dichotomy between like specific goals and then kind of overarching priorities about, you know, this is priority about our utility system versus, you know, Parks and Rec, when those kind of collide and
Yeah.
time is, you know, resource, which one we prioritize? How do you kind of strike that dichotomy in a strategic plan?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that's a challenge that everyone faces. You know, everyone wants to do things and there's limited money. I think you really need to look at what value you're going to get, you know, whether you work with this stakeholder or that stakeholder. And, you know, again, when you look at those themes, sometimes there's data creation that can happen that actually will benefit two different groups. And so that's, you know, that's where you kind of go like, all right, this benefits two groups, let's move this up higher than if this one thing that's only going to benefit this, you know, one other group. But yeah, you're going to have to balance it. There's always going to be trade-offs, and you know, it's never going to be the case that everyone's happy with what they get.
Got any more questions?
Have you noticed any, I want to say a trend, I guess, the difference between success in implementing this or getting this to be bought into with a centralized kind of GI staff versus distributed?
That's a great question. I think that we've done this with organizations that have both. And I think it just depends on the organization and how it functions, because I've seen successful groups where you have the central GIS, and then I've also seen that, you know, not work quite as well because they're not able to meet everyone's needs and someone's disgruntled. Whereas if they had that person or people on their own team, then they could direct them. I think the strategic plan can really help in both cases to highlight maybe some people who are getting left out and are being ignored by that central GIS group and also when you have GIS spread across the organization, it can really help to bring those teams together and get them to collaborate more, to share resources, and get more done.
I have a question. How do you manage up for this if you have hesitant supervisors?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest battle is first just getting approval to actually do this, right? And explaining to your leadership why it's important to invest time and money in it. I think if you can point back to the fact that the organization has a strategic plan, then it makes sense that the GIS team would have one too. And I think you just have to have frequent conversations with them and again, demonstrate those successes, show those ROIs so that you can get them to see the light. It's hard. I have a customer that I'm working with right now, and it's just like banging my head against the wall. Like, you really need to kind of step back and do some planning, and they just don't. They have such limited funding, they don't want to spend what limited money they have on that, and it's really hard. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, let's give